Okay, well, welcome. Thank you all for joining us. As I said, this is a webinar we're putting on. This is SOLT, Society of the Theatre and UK Theatre for agents in the theatre world. So first of all, thank you for joining us today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Julian Bird, the Chief Executive of SOLT and UK Theatre. And for better or worse, I seem to be the person leading the charge for the theatre industry at the moment. On everything that is going on with government and without. And what I'm going to try and do today is just give you, I guess, about 20 minutes briefing on everything we're up to and what I think the latest is and what might be ahead a little bit as I see it from our discussions and from discussions with the government. At the bottom of your screen, you will see a thing that says Q&A on it. At any point during this, you can send us a question live, which we will be able to see, and I'll do my best to answer those. So as I said, probably I'll talk for about 20 minutes and then about 10 minutes or more, however long we need for questions at the end as well. So please do type your questions down there if anything's unclear. Or I don't cover something that you would like answered. Also, if you'd like to ask a question anonymously, the system has that ability. You can just tick the box to make your question anonymous. We will not know who you are then. So what am I going to try and cover today? So I'm going to talk a little bit about the government advice, a little bit about the package of measures that has been progressively announced finance-wise so far. A little bit about how long do we think this will all last? What does it look like? A little bit about the insurance position, which has been much talked about, but just want to give you our perspective on where we think that is now. Stuff around pay and unions, because you will all have actors, creatives, possibly other people who are caught in the middle of this, who are on current agreements. So I want to try and let you know where we think we are on that. Talk a little bit about the workforce support that we currently have out there for everybody in the industry, just so you're all up to speed on that. And talk a little bit about what's next, I guess. What do we think the next little period looks like? Now, some of you might be out there thinking, why on earth are SOLT and UK Theatre even talking to us today? And indeed, on top of this, we have already done one of these for press marketing, everything in that. People who will work in companies around that field. We've done one for the big suppliers to the industry, so that's the people who provide all the big lighting, sound, technical equipment for shows all over the country and theatres all over the country. Tomorrow we're doing one for casting agents. And the reason we're doing that is because, quite frankly, at the end of all of this, we need the whole ecology for the theatre world to be intact and come together. And so, although SOLT and UK Theatre traditionally really only, mainly engage with theatres themselves and everyone who run the theatres and producers and general managers, this felt like the moment when we actually need to try and listen and take care where we can, and definitely get feedback from all parts of the ecology. And I firmly think that you as a group, the agents community, is incredibly important, that we try and feed back what we are hearing very directly from government to you, and crucially that we start to hear from you what you are hearing, if indeed it is different from what we're picking up from everybody else. So that's why we're here today. So let me get started. So we have become the conduit in and out of government, basically, for everything to do with the theatre industry. That's both DCMS and Treasury, and all the discussions that are around that. So we are basically feeding in the needs of the industry, and when announcements are made and don't fit our industry, we are the ones feeding back on that. So I won't labour the latest government advice medically, but you will realise that pretty much everyone in the theatre world has now moved to work from home, which gives us challenges, as you know. So we don't have the theatre groups, we don't have theatres working from within their own office complexes. They're all working from home and using technology like this to try and get things done. And we are encouraging everybody to follow that advice to the limit, because if we don't do that, we all know this period will go on for a lot longer. In a way, I think we're sort of a little beyond that conversation, and more the interesting things are what support is the government putting in place at the moment. I should say apologies if I look down every so often. I just want to make sure with my notes I'm getting everything exactly correct. Now, some of these things may help you as businesses as well. And if you need any more detail that you can't find, please do ask us at another time or after this, and we will gladly send you details or where to go to get the details. So what's been announced so far in terms of announcements? Well, a lot has been announced for businesses, as you know, first in the budget, which seems forever ago, but was only about 2 weeks ago now. And then the next set earlier last week. So a lot for businesses. So for those of you, as you know, with a rateable value below £51,000 on offices, you already had a 12-month business rate holiday, and now it's been announced for leisure industry. Anybody can have a 12-month holiday. However, that is not clear yet as to whether that includes buildings that are used for theatrical purposes, workshops, rehearsal rooms, offices, or whether that is purely for theatres. That is being clarified, but that's in. There's a range of grants, which certainly for some of you who are at the smaller end, who have very small rateable values, there are grants that the local councils, we hope, will be flowing through the local authorities. There's two of those, one called a small business rate relief that's up to £10,000, and another one for slightly larger premises, which is up to £25,000. Those are grants, they're not loans. And then there's two bigger ones, which is important that you probably just understand those are out there, because some of the big players in the theatre world will obviously be applying for these, the same as the big players in other industries. So first of all, there's one called the Business Interruption Loan Scheme, where businesses can apply for 12-month interest-free loan of up to £5 million. And we now believe, as of some news at lunchtime, that pretty much everyone in our industry should be able to apply for one of those. It is a loan, but it is interest-free for 12 months. And then for even larger companies, there is a liquidity scheme through the Bank of England that won't apply to many within our business. On individuals, as you know, the first bit of news was 6 days ago, which was that mortgage lenders have agreed that they will give people payment holidays of up to 3 months if they're caught up in the scheme. That was the first thing. And then, of course, on Friday, we saw the much bigger package of measures announced, not least this new, as I've coined it, the 80% scheme. So this is the Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme, which basically allows employers to move staff onto a furloughed scheme. So they basically say these staff would not be ones who have anything to do at the moment. We would actually be making them redundant. We wouldn't be able to keep to afford them. You can move them onto this furloughed status and claim up to 80% of their salaries, up to £2,500 per month. That's backdated to the 1st of March, and the Chancellor has said that will be for 3 months at least for now. Now, having said all that, that scheme at the moment seems to all be geared around people who are on PAYE. So not just people who are on a payroll, but people on PAYE. So that will work for some people in theatres, it will work for some technical staff. But we have been over the weekend, in fact, I was on the phone literally within moments of the announcement with government. We have been working over the weekend to try and ascertain whether people who were in performing companies, I'll come on and talk about that in a minute, whether they would be eligible. So the issue for us is, as you know, even better than I, most people in our industry, if you're working on a show, paid on a weekly basis, you're paid through the payroll of a company, often a limited company that's been set up to put on that show. So you're paid through a payroll of an employer, of an engager of you, but you're not subject to PAYE. So this would apply to actors, musicians, quite a lot of stage management, some technical staff. At the moment, it appears they may not be eligible to come within the remit of this scheme. We are pushing the government. There's been numerous calls and discussions on it already this morning. We're pushing for the whole industry. As soon as we have any news on that, we will let you know. But as we sit here now, we don't believe actors and people who were on those shows are caught. That may change. And of course, we will communicate and the government will communicate if that is the case. I think this was a scenario, the way we work as an industry, included actually in television and film, with weekly payments, people being self-employed for tax reasons, but employed for other reasons. It's a hybrid scheme that people didn't really understand. So just to say, we are on the case on that, and we will let you know. The other thing is we firmly expect, there's been a huge amount of lobbying, as you know, about the whole general support for freelancers and self-employed. We firmly expect announcements on that. Then we know that there are more announcements by the Prime Minister and his team at 5 p.m. today. We don't know what's in those, but we firmly do expect there will be an announcement of more support for freelancers and self-employed very soon. What they look like, who alone knows. So that's on the finance package and the support measures, if you like. How long do we think it will last? And the answer is we have no idea. What we do know is at least 12 weeks is what it looks like, these measures at the moment, possibly longer. And the reason the government, I think, are being so reticent, and we've pushed them in conference calls with others, is that no country, apart from China, which is very, very different, they think, to the rest of the world, no country, especially those in Europe, have come out the other side yet. So until there's a track record, it's very hard to know what the model looks like. And obviously, in terms of engaging actors, etc., for the future, that makes planning very, very difficult for theatres across the country and producers. So how do you plan for rehearsals? How do you plan for new productions? How do you plan to go back into re-rehearsal for long-running shows? So that is all very complicated, and definitely one for down the line when we get through this next immediate little crisis period. I just want to talk about insurance very briefly. There's been much talk about the Prime Minister effectively announcing, no, this time, can you believe it's only a week ago, Monday night last week, that from now the public should avoid theatres and other public spaces, and that he had basically screwed over the industry, excuse my French, because he hadn't mandated it. Let me just be clear, there are two main forms of insurance for theatres and production companies. Some venues have something called cancellation cover, which in certain circumstances, and only certain circumstances, they have cover under that cancellation cover for communicable diseases. And depending on the clause of that communicable disease cover, COVID-19 might be eligible for it or might not. So for those, it is very important that the government has a mandated closure, which indeed we now have. The other main form of insurance that the theatre world has is business interruption cover. This is the thing that most productions take out, most producers take out for their productions. Just to be clear, we don't believe that pretty much any business interruption cover will have coverage for communicable diseases, whatever the government has said. So we don't believe there will be pretty much any claims under business interruption cover. So in terms of anyone asking and actors asking, the insurance position is murky, and I don't think it's a big kind of white hope in terms of payments out from that at all, unfortunately. On unions, let me just say there's been an awful lot of work over the last week, led by our union team and others, discussing with each of the unions. And of course, that has slightly now been held up because of the government, this 80% scheme announcement on Friday, and more work needing to be done on that. It's pretty clear, you know, we are with most unions in a force majeure situation, and we are having to decide what that all means. And with each of the unions, I think there will be a slightly different agreement, and I hope those will be concluded very shortly now, once we finalise what that government scheme looks like. As you know, there was some interim payments made last week on payroll, because those decisions kind of get made on a Tuesday. It may be we're into another interim payroll situation this week, which some people will choose to act and some people won't. But to be clear, any of those interim payments will be kind of advances against any and all future arrangements, confirmations. So apologies, it is complicated, and we're moving sort of as fast as the government can move, and the unions are moving as fast as the government can move as well. But just to be clear, you know, all of these union arrangements and everything only cover the people who were engaged by the theatre world at this moment in time. It does not cover the huge, and we're talking potentially a couple of 100,000 people who the theatre industry engage at any one time, who are freelancers and self-employed. Now, at this moment in time, they might have been off working in film or television, or indeed they might not have been working at all. And those people, none of these schemes will touch at the moment. And that's why we, along with the Creative Industries Federation and Equity and many other people, have been lobbying the government to do something about freelancers and self-employed. We await news on that, and I'm really hoping we will get that soon. So what do we think is next that you should probably be aware of? Well, I think we're in this crisis mode at the moment of trying to sort out payments, what happens to everyone's contracts, what the next little period looks like. Clearly, there is a huge desire amongst the theatre community to try and keep stuff alive online, and that will be happening. And I suspect that lots of people will be streaming stuff and doing stuff and asking for permission to reuse old filmed material. We don't have an official line on that with the unions or anything. All I'd say is, please everyone be as free as we can do to try and keep our audiences engaged in the theatre world. We will definitely start a major piece of work very soon on how we rebuild the industry. How do we come out of this? What does the recovery look like? How long is that? Which will have to be guided by the government advice on medicine and science. But we clearly need to start a major piece of work around all of that as well. And the other thing is, of course, the one thing we know for definite is that lots of people will be struggling. Will be struggling with their mental health, will be struggling with loneliness, will be struggling for money. So I think most of you will know that last week I managed to pull together all the leading theatrical charities. We have combined all of that onto one new microsite. It's called theatresupport.info, which both has all the welfare stuff that the industry has available. So that's the 24-hour helplines, where people can call about literally anything, but that's where all the support is. And also all the charities, and we're up to 24 charities now, and all their schemes and what you can apply for. So it's very clear, if you're an actor, you can apply here. If you're a stage manager, you can apply here, you can do whatever. So just to say that is all there. Please, if you need to use it yourselves, please use it, but also please do let any of your clients who you believe are struggling, please do let them know. Of course, the endowments in the theatre charities are only going to last so long as well, but at least it's something we can do as support. I'm going to pause there, and please do ask any questions down the bottom, and we'll try and run through some of those answers there. Some of the questions are starting to come in, so let me talk about that. So interim payments. I don't believe, so the question on interim payments, is there a world in which producers could ask actors to pay back money if their final arrangement means that they've actually made interim payments in excess of the final settlement, e.g. leads on big productions? I'd love to say I thought that was a possibility. I'm afraid I don't. I think the interim payments will be some portion of the appropriate minimums in a category. So if you're in a category A theatre in the West End, it would be the minimum under that category will be some form of interim payment, a percentage of that. I don't think it will be a percentage of what your person normally gets. But I firmly expect that we will get a resolution on this quite quickly. With regards to SMEs, have you any advice for those of us whose rates are rolled up in our monthly rent and consequently have no rateable value as far as the local authority might be aware of? I do not know that. Let me feed that. If one of the team can keep hold of that question, let us feed that in. The way I will tell you on business rates is that is all done through the local authority. So if your rates are rolled up into your monthly rent, then my belief is that your landlord will get that rent relief back, and you will need to get the rent relief from your landlord, if that makes sense. So the way it works is the government don't just send you a check, it works through the local authorities themselves. And crucially, we have not yet got an answer on the over 51,000 rateable value, but my guess is all of you as agents will be below that, and therefore you will have 100% rateable holiday for 12 months anyway. So check with your landlord is what I would say, but we will also feed that question in directly as well. Will we send a list of the charities? The answer is they're on our website. If you go on to SOLT UK Theatre, on all our Twitter feeds, and they're all on the charity, or they're all on that website, theatresupport.info. All 24 are on there. And that's correct. That's all on there. Another question: we've been told actors would get 2 weeks' salary and that's it. Correct or incorrect? I'm afraid that is a little simplistic. I'm afraid. as I said, negotiations with equity are underway. There are obviously huge complications to do with those who've been engaged at the moment, those who were engaged for some point in the future, and everything in between. And that will depend partly on this government scheme as well. So I'm afraid that's incorrect at the moment, but who knows, that may become more of a normal picture. If individuals are furloughed, is there a minimum period for which they must be re-engaged post-pandemic? At the moment, so remember, you can only be furloughed at the moment of your PAYE, we think, at the moment, but no, we are not aware of any minimum period afterwards. However, having said that, we are awaiting for the guide for employers under that new furlough scheme to become available. We believe that those guidance may come out even within the next 24 hours. There are a huge number of other questions on that. For example, do you continue to deduct tax and NI from someone who's furloughed? Does the employer still have to pay employers national insurance, etc., etc.? Question, if you're furloughed, can you still work from home, or does that mean you can't work at all? No, already the guidance seems to be fairly clear. If you're furloughed, you cannot work. So the idea is this is somebody who would have been terminated, quote unquote, and instead you are furloughing them. So you can't work and be in receipt of that furloughed money, we believe. Question on some producers have started to terminate already and cancel tour shows. Yes, it's back. Well, I don't know the exact answer to this. The Chancellor announced it's backdated till March the 1st. I don't believe any producer terminated a tour before March the 1st. So potentially that could all be backdated, but let's wait and see. As I said, we are waiting for all of that from government at the moment. Once social restrictions are lifted and the theatres can open again, how long do you think it will be before shows are back up and running? Weeks, months? The honest answer to that is I don't know, and I think theatres and stuff fall into several different answers. So if you're a producing theatre outside London, or indeed inside London, it's obviously going to take some time to get your production back up and running, even if you've got it ready, because it has to be rehearsed, go through tech before it can be on stage. For the long-running shows in London, you have to hope that your cast will still be available and an arrangement will have been made. That might mean that could be quicker, but that's not clear either. And then, of course, you've got particularly the situation, I think, in the touring market and in regional theatre, where you've got tours that have become unviable for the future and may be cancelled, where you're going to have huge gaps in theatres' schedules. So you may have a regional theatre which has a great show one week and then nothing for 2 weeks, and then another show in the third week, fourth week. So I think it's going to be very sporadic. And as I said, the biggest thing we think we're going to have to do is to work out what that all looks like. How do we come out of this period, however long it is? And the sooner there's a bit of certainty around how long these measures we think are going to be in place, that will help us do that. Is the Arts Council still funding projects? The answer is the Arts Council is still funding its MPOs to the same level. They are looking at all their other funds to see how best to use them to support the sector in this period. But my belief is they're not taking funds away from anyone where that's already been committed, unless the project, apart from, and I don't know the answer to this, unless the project hasn't actually started yet, but they are looking at every single one of their funding streams to see what they can do. That's Arts Council England, just to be clear. With regards to SMEs, we've answered that one. We're going to keep that one about the rolling up of rent. If clients are working on a production that's been stopped, but then at the time the production is ready to pick up again, client will be moving on to a new project. No, we're aware of that situation about people rolling on and new cast changes and all of that. I think that will be a conversation on all sides, production by production. I'm not sure we're going to manage to get an industry-wide agreement on that, because some people may technically be then engaged on 2 jobs or be committed to 2 jobs. So I think that's going to be an individual conversation. As agents, I don't believe we're eligible for the rate relief grants, as these are for the retail, hospitality and leisure industry. So the answer is, as I said, at the moment, under the leisure industry, only actual theatre buildings count. We are lobbying to try and make sure that everybody around the theatre industry could be part of that. But as I said, if you have a rateable value under £51,000, you have a 12-month business rate holiday, irrespective of whether you're in the leisure industry. The Chancellor announced that in the budget. And a lot of office buildings, small offices, especially those in the agents community, my guess is will be below a rateable value of £51,000, and therefore you should have free a 12-month rent relief. For those over £51,000, we are busy lobbying on that at the moment. Question, has the argument been made with Treasury the difficulty of calculating a freelancer support entitlement could easily be mitigated by calculating 80% of their 18-19 self-assessment tax return? Yes, absolutely. There have been numerous suggestions into Treasury as to how they could do that, and we await to see what might happen on that. Question, what is the situation for those cast in productions, both those under contract and those whose contracts are still awaited but have not actually started rehearsals? So the contract has not actually commenced. So this is effectively under, in equity terms, this is a failure to produce effectively. So this is a show that is not going to happen. And what happens with those? We don't have an answer on that, I'm afraid, yet. We've asked people not to make quick, rash decisions on that unless they absolutely have to. If they have to, then equity will have an individual conversation, production by production, and try and come to some accommodation. But until we've worked out all the rest, we are waiting until we know. Would the agent salaries protected the same 80%? Indeed. I feel for you. That's exactly the case for all freelancers and self-employed and everything else. So totally understand. And of course, when you earn commission from actors, how does that works? And I had a feeling we'd get this question about agents' commission. Do we need to charge commission on the client's potential 80% if they qualify? Because they're sole traders or whatever. I don't have an answer for you on that, I'm afraid. I suspect that's down to you individually as an agent to decide what you might be able to do. A question on a small agent who works from home. Is there anything I might be eligible for to keep me employed apart from a loan? I'm the business owner and also on PAYE. No, I mean, whether we need to check this out. We've got this question elsewhere, whether people can, if they have their own company and they're paying PAYE, could you furlough yourself? You're the owner of the company, so therefore you're obviously permitted to do certain work as the owner of the company rather than as an employee of the company. But if you're actually an employee of the company as well as the owner, you could furlough yourself. So that's a good question which we want to try and answer. But in theory, I can't see why you couldn't furlough yourself as an employee of your own company and claim money from the government. How will the government and equity monitor that staff have been properly furloughed? We don't know that, and not being asked to do it. We don't know that, although we are told that the government are coming up with a scheme for that. In other words, to make sure that people aren't just working 100%, but also claiming the money. Okay, I'm going to stop there. We've come to the end of most of the questions. Just to say a huge thank you for joining us. We will do another one of these if and when you would like that to happen. What I would say is please feed into us comments, questions, thoughts, support you need as a group. We want to try and do everything we can to make sure that you are looked after as we come out of this process or as we go through this process. And what I desperately need, please, from you is feedback from you as to what's working, what's not working, and everything else. So please do send us details. The best email is ceooffice at soltukt.co.uk. That's the one you all sort of replied to or had an invite from for all of this. So CEO as in Chief Executive, CEO Office at soltukt.co.uk. Tracy in my office has been in touch with lots of you through this as well. So please do feed stuff into us and we will try and do our best for you as well as for everybody else in the theatre community. So all I can say is please do all stay safe, stay well, and we will do this at some point again in the future. Thanks very much.